sky, landed in a field, baby. Hey folks, what's going on? It's Moot Davis, and this is another episode of the Moot Point Podcast. My attempt to reach out to the world beyond and say hello. I hope you're ready. I'm ready. Let's do it. Now, in today's episode, I'm going to be interviewing my longtime buddy, Mr. Blake Oswald. Now, Blake's a drummer and a musician, world class. He's just one of the nicest guys I've ever met, and I'm really happy to call him one of my friends. And he's been in the trenches with me. We've been on the road together, and he's sort of seen me at my best and my worst, and is still around to talk about it. So, yeah, here we go. Let's give Blake Oswald a call. Hey Blake, what's going on?
Not too much, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. So look, I wanted to give you a call and just sort of chat with you about how we met, and then sort of get a feel for, you know, your background and all that good stuff, and then talk about all the kind of shit we went through together. So
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, see, I guess we met this summer's actually 12 years ago.
Holy cow.
And, yeah, man, it's been a while. I had worked at the label that you were signed to, and I've been living in Texas for a while. Relocated back to LA, and just kind of showed up and was seeing what was going on, who was playing where and what, kind of looking for a gig myself. And
Right.
just so happened that I got invited to audition for you at the moment. Went from there.
Right on. Now, when did you actually start playing the drums?
Oh, let's see. My parents got me a kit when I was really young, probably 5 or 6, but I just kind of bashed around on them. No one ever really showed me, what to do with them. So I didn't really get back into it until I was out of high school. I started kind of late, probably around 19 or 20.
Okay.
And my girlfriend at the time bought me a set, the girlfriend who's now my wife, and I proceeded to torture all the people in our apartment building as I learned how to play.
Awesome.
Got at it ever since. Yeah.
Right. And so you were living in Texas at the time that you got the drums?
Yes, I grew up in Texas, back to that. Grew up in Texas and moved out to LA to go to college, finish up college, and I sort of started interning with the label that you ended up being signed on, so
okay.
Background to that.
Gotcha. And did you go...
I moved back to Texas for a while.
Okay. And were you going to school for, like, the music business stuff?
Yeah, I actually moved out here to finish up in theater, because I had started to study theater a little bit, and within less than a semester, I knew that I needed to switch to the music industry just because I took a class as a whim, and I just fell in love with it. So
yeah,
it was a no-brainer from then.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. And so when you were interning for Little Dog, obviously that's where you met Pete for the first time, and then you actually went on the road and sold merch and stuff, right, for them?
I did. It was such a great opportunity in retrospect. It was part of an internship that I had done with him that turned into a summer gig to go on the road and sort of manage his affairs as well as merchandise while he was away from the office. And I ended up doing at least 2 summers of that, and then was fortunate enough to be in on some of the production work for a couple of records, a couple of Dwight records as well as the Flacco record, and a few other little here and there that were going on. So
that's awesome.
I got a good taste of it. Yeah, and it's addicting. No
Right. Totally. And so I think when we first met and you were coming around, we were at the very beginning of replacing a long stream of drummers. I think we had our first guy for the little band that Pete put together, and we had just let him go, or were about to let him go possibly, and we were looking for his replacement, and you just happened to be in town and all that kind of stuff, and you'd already known Pete, but did Pete know you were a drummer, or?
He knew that I played, but I never, attempted to play anything in front of him, or there was ever any opportunity for that, so to speak. So
Gotcha.
when I walked in saying that I could play, he had no idea, to be honest.
Right.
So, when you and I met, actually, for the first time, which was just very briefly, it was on your first tour with Pete. You were coming through Austin, and I was still there, preparing to move back to LA. And I came in and caught one of your shows there, and that's where we'd had our first meeting when you were at Antone's, I believe it was.
Oh, crazy.
Right. And so I purchased your album when I was there. I mean, I knew Pete, and you and I had met. We chatted just for a quick minute. And I had listened to the album a lot, so I kind of had a leg up. Without any intention,
Oh, that's funny.
So, yeah, I just liked the album, and then I wasn't anticipating an audition with you at all. I was just putting some feelers out. And
cool.
Lo and behold.
Yeah, right. Lo and behold. And so the way I remember it is that, obviously we were in transition with the drummer situation, but I think there was also, things were already starting to become bizarre, and it was just, with the label and with Pete and stuff like that, but we were, charging full steam ahead. I don't remember your audition stuff, but I remember once we were like, oh yeah, Blake, man, he can actually shuffle and do all the stuff, so I remember Pete being real excited, and I at that point in time, I really had no clue who was a good drummer, who was a bad drummer. You know what I mean? I was just literally holding on for dear life and trying not to get fired myself from my own gig. So I don't remember the audition. I just remember you being in the drum room, where we'd have our rehearsals, and I remember rehearsing and with you, and then we'd take a break and we'd hang out, out back in the little parking lot. And then the next memory I have is of us sort of on the road somewhere, and I think you were in the bunk behind me, and I said something, when we travel or just in general, I say sort of stupid repetitive things over and over again, just to pass the time. And I think I said one to you, and you actually laughed. And I get ignored by everybody else in the van. But you laughed, and it was like, and then I think we actually started talking, and then it became a huge friendship for me. So.
Well, likewise, when we met and had our quick little audition process. There wasn't much said between you and I, just because it was just business, and we were just getting down to it, and we got to hurry up because we got to get this going. It was that kind of, we were moving because there was some stuff coming up. So
yeah,
and stepping into the situation and sort of not knowing what was expected of me, my approach was to just definitely sort of hang back and
right,
not ruffle any feathers. So I was just kind of rolling along with whatever was happening, which is my nature in general. But
yeah. Well, it worked out there, because I don't know that we had any idea,
No kidding. Yeah, but we just slowly kind of started to warm to each other after a couple of tours. I think the drummer that was playing before me, he and you had developed a friendship, so I can understand why you might not necessarily have been so excited about the new guy that was all of a sudden here. So.
Right, yeah. I really didn't want to have to let him go, and then there was an incident where he sort of vanished for a period of time in East Texas, and and then that sort of started the ball rolling, and was his demise. But I really felt awful when I had to let him go, and Pete was like, "All right, you gotta call him up and tell him, let him go." And so I remember like, "Shit, man, I don't want to fire this guy," you know what I mean? But I knew it had to be, or at least that's the way it was back then, So I wasn't in the best frame of mind for a new person to come in. If I had any idea how many new people there would be over the course of those 4 years, then it would have been a different story. But yeah, that initial moment when you came around, I was just so bummed at what I just had to do, you know. So,
right. Understandably.
Yeah.
I mean, hard to be put in that position, unfortunately, but
yeah.
part of
But
the game.
yeah, man. But yeah, once we got rolling, like I said, it's become a real, one of the few friendships I'm really proud of. So.
I appreciate that, and I think the same. I have a very few handful of close friends, and you're definitely one of them. So.
Yeah, man. Same here.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, and I remember, as the years went on, working with Little Dog and Pete and all that kind of stuff, shit just got weirder and weirder for me. And you'd worked with us for, how long did you play with us? Do you remember?
We started that summer of 2004, and then into 2005. I'm not sure how far into, but it was pretty brutal. Meaning just the amount of shows, and the amount of travel we were putting in. It was a lot of hard work.
Yeah. We were rolling pretty hard.
Yes, most definitely. It was. We were doing at least 2 week on, 2 week off runs every month, and then there were certain times where it would be more than that. Where it might be a full month run, and we'd come back and have a small break, and then do something smaller. But it was
right.
It was a full schedule, no doubt about it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and as things went on, and the situation for me just got more and more strange and troublesome. I remember like being able to come over to your house once I think you once you finally left, we'd come home from a tour and I'd be able to like call you up and come over and hang out with you and your wife and stuff and just sort of decompress and debrief, and try and come up with like a battle plan of how to hang on for another week,
Right. Tighten up the belt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yes, we had a few good evenings around the pool.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it's true, and it's true. Like without those sessions, I don't know if I would have held on as long as I did, because it was just the fact that somebody else was like, man, I've been there, I know exactly what you're going through, I've seen what the deal is, and it's not all you. So hang in there. So it gives you the sense that you're not crazy, and that you just gotta hold on for a little bit longer. So
have hope and wait.
Yes, that was the mantra.
No, definitely. No, it was. It was definitely that. You were overloaded, and it was 24/7. You weren't. For the long time there, you were literally living at the label. So there was very few places to run to, so to speak.
Yeah.
To just be able to be with your own thoughts or whatever. So.
Yeah. It was definitely intense.
Yeah. Yes, indeedy.
Yep.
But then you move forward and we're able to get your place downtown, and then things kind of cut loose a little bit more after that. You were able to breathe.
Yeah, man, that was a golden year that year. Moving out of living in the drum room for, I don't know how long it was. It seemed like an eternity, but yeah, living in the studio drum room to move into that loft downtown, it was definitely cool. And then my brother came out and we shared the place together, so that was big fun.
Had a hell of a closet rack, if I remember.
Yeah, that's right, the rolling garment rack.
It was a great place. I was happy that you were able to get it. I knew it was hemorrhaging you financially just because of the way things were at the moment, but
right.
At the same time, it was worth every penny.
Yeah, totally. But I did find that, once I had my own space, I would come home from these tours and like the alter personality would kick in, like immediately, to try and like just shake off whatever I just went through, and I talked a bit about it to my brother, but it was totally like this alter ego Errol Flynn kind of character thing that would come out, as some sort of cover for me,
Sure, yeah. Any kind of escape you could get, I mean,
yeah.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Just trying to change everything about your daily life to something different, for that short amount of time that you can before you have to flip the switch and turn it back on again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very interesting time.
Yeah. I can only imagine. Kick the door open and tear off the rhinestones, dude. Grab the safari jacket and become someone else for a little while.
That's it. So, you said you're from Texas. Now, where exactly in Texas are you from?
I've done stints in all the big cities, but I was born close to the Houston area. Lived there for a while. I've then lived in the Dallas area, and then also in the Austin area. So
right.
Made the rounds there, and actually started playing in the Austin area, and that's kind of where I sort of learned the ropes, if you will. Just playing in bands around town there and around Central Texas, trying to figure out how it all works.
Right. And when you were growing up, like what kind of what music stuff were you into?
Fortunately, very lucky to have parents that encouraged the gambit of things. Of course, being in Texas, you had your Ray Prices and your Gary Stewarts and Gene Watson, of course.
Right.
Hardcore country stuff. But I remember my parents taking me to see Kiss and the Bee Gees and Ted Nugent and, just...
Oh, that's awesome.
You name it.
Yeah.
All across the board. And, of course, the Columbia Record Club loaded my library up with that, all sorts of different stuff. So it was, a lot of traditional Texas stuff for sure, and that's sort of, the way I've found myself now. That's sort of the music that I've, I guess, featured with. That's mainly what I play.
Yeah, sure.
But grew up with, a mom that was a singer, an uncle that was a singer, and a granddad that was a singer. So
crazy.
Definitely some musicians in the family.
Yeah, totally. And now, do you just have the one older brother?
That's correct. Yep, just an older brother. He's a fire captain in Texas, and he's awesome. We're about 3.5 years apart. We're great friends.
Cool, man. And does he play any musical instruments or anything like that?
None at all. He sang in the choir when he was in school, but just sort of worked away from it. And but now his youngest son, he's in choir and he's doing some theater, musical theater, and so I think he's kind of coming back around to it, through his kids, so to speak.
Yeah. Yep. You're gonna sit him down and tell him it's a horrible path.
Right.
Don't do it.
Burn your instrument and never speak of it again. Oh, I wish I could say that. There's the highest of highs and lowest of lows, but I can't imagine doing things any other way, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, there are times in a shitty club where you're not having a good day, but music is art. It's beautiful. So
yeah, man.
No regrets.
No regrets, buddy. It's not as easy as it used to be,
Oh man, Jesus. I cannot imagine crawling in that van and doing 30 days.
Oh,
with 5 suits packed in there and all sleeping in one Motel 6 room.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't compute anymore,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Thankfully.
Yeah. Which makes you think, how crazy was Pete to do that?
Oh, man. I mean, gosh. Yeah, that's a disease for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I try to look at it from the aspect of it was his label, and so of course you want to sort of see his artist through. But it's to be his age at the time when we took off to do that. That's pretty crazy, man. I mean, crazy. I mean, that's pretty
man.
Wow, to be able to pull that off. That's
Yeah.
And crave it, I guess.
Yeah. And looking back, I mean, that certainly explains some of his outbursts and shit in the van and shit with some of the guys,
Right. No, most definitely. Having had all the luxuries, at your disposal, and they were certainly valid. They'd earned it, no doubt about it.
Hell yeah.
To be around, coming at it from the other side, trying to break someone, help push someone through to where you, sort of are or were, or however you want to describe it.
Yeah.
It's an undertaking.
Yeah, totally.
A lot of energy and a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man, we got to talk about the story though. We got to talk about his famous meltdown that one on stage. I don't even remember where it was. It was somewhere up north in the northern side of the country, right?
Yes, it was in Central California in Chico.
Oh, right. Yes, Chico. Yeah.
Chico, yeah. Good old almond country.
Yeah.
And it was literally the last, I think it was the last day of the show. The last day of the tour, if I'm not mistaken. The last date.
Something like that, right? Because I remember maybe he wasn't feeling well or he was getting sick or something like that. Because he went and convalesced in some hotel somewhere up in Washington State. Remember? Like in Yachts, maybe.
Right. If I remember correctly, we did a northern run, an I-5 run from LA up to Seattle and back. And
okay.
Stops all the way, probably at least a good, it might have been a 2-week run, it probably was.
Yeah.
And then as we were coming back down, he started to get ill as we left Washington, I think. And then
I see.
We had a show in Oregon at Yachts that he managed to get through, but he was sick, he wasn't feeling well. So
right.
He did just that, convalesced at a hotel while we all slept in the office of the venue owner.
Right.
Which we were glad to have.
Yeah, totally, man. That was awesome. I remember it there.
And so, he wasn't feeling well, and as we made our way south to line up the tour, it was either the last date or the next to the last. We were on stage at this club in Chico, and, I don't think that we did the proper sound check, although we did a small line check, but there was a kid out front mixing, and it just didn't sound good. And I think after the second song, it broke. So.
The hammer came down, yeah.
He just had a little tirade and started yelling at the kid mixing and to throw everything off the fucking stage and out in the street.
Right, and this is in front of an audience. This is in front of an audience, and unbeknownst to Pete or us, our first reviewer, for a live show was in the audience.
This I didn't know. This makes it even better.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
But yes, in front of an audience.
Yeah.
So that, if I remember correctly, I had already informed you that I was leaving the band at the time.
Right.
And I had informed you of that the tour before, that was going to be our last tour. But this tour had already been booked, so I was, trying to do the good thing and honor that tour.
Right.
So this was of no problem to me when this tirade happened on stage.
Right.
I knew I was done.
Your bag was already packed, yeah.
Right. I was wrapping things up. So, but it's the only time that I've ever been on stage that I thought to myself, well, I'm just going to get up and walk off. This is embarrassing, and I'm looking around thinking, if one other person goes, I'm right behind them.
Yeah,
I've
totally.
never thought that before, I just wanted to crawl under my drones,
Yeah,
so,
totally.
And, some say, oh, well, he's who he is. And it's like, well,
yeah.
That's a toss-up. It doesn't validate that behavior to me, so.
Right. Right. Yeah, that was, I remember that, and I remember we had a weird feeling that night. I remember talking to you in the parking lot before the show even started, and we had some sort of weird premonition that it was going to be an interesting night.
I do recall this. Walking.
Yeah.
Beforehand, walking back from getting something to eat, just having a discussion that something was in the air.
Oh, was it?
So, and it was, I say my bags were packed jokingly, but it was definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done to have to leave, because it was the best band that I've ever played in, still to this time, and I had a blast. I loved playing with you and got along really well. And,
yeah, man.
This is what I do, sort of thing, and then I've got to walk away from it. So
yeah.
It was not easy.
Yeah, shit, I understand. Yeah, that was something.
drink to that.
Now, changing gears, did you ever come to the athletic club in downtown LA?
I did accompany you on one of your on one of your drinking sessions at the downtown athletic.
So after my loft situation downtown fell through with my brother, we were able to make it last for about 1 year, and then my brother couldn't stand living with me anymore, and and so he screwed off and went to go live with somebody else, and I checked into the Cecil Hotel. Now this the Cecil Hotel is a hotel in downtown LA, and it's most recently famous for they found a tourist floating dead for God knows how many weeks in the water tank on the top of the building. But also, like, serial killers had lived there, and multiple people have committed suicide by jumping out of the windows there. Now, this was all unbeknownst to me, and I wasn't there anywhere near the time that the girl ended up dead in the water tower. But
Got an alibi.
yeah. But yeah, I sort of went in there. Like I was always traveling around in suits and stuff because I have literally nothing. I had this 15-passenger van that I hated driving, and just like this rolling garment rack of suits and a couple of guitars. I mean, that's all I had. And I moved all this shit into the Cecil Hotel. And like the Cecil Hotel is the kind of joint where it's not like a normal hotel. Like it's a hotel for like the next step is Skid Row, and literally Skid Row is like right outside the door. And so the Cecil Hotel is basically a joint where if you like, if a bum gets some money for the night and they don't blow it on like, getting completely drunk on some sort of cheap wine, they're able to buy the room for the night at the Cecil Hotel. Now I rolled in there with like a week or two of pay, so I was able to secure myself a room with its own bathroom, which was living. And but it was the kind of place where, like, if you had a lady friend come over at night, you had to sign her in and leave a $5 deposit at the front desk. But it's
imagine what the deposit went towards.
Oh, God only knows. Yeah, God only knows. And so, but the building itself was beautiful. I mean, it was literally like one of the old Art Deco buildings, in downtown LA. Once you get into the lobby, the outside facade looks a little funkified, but once you get into the lobby, it's all marble and pillars and all sorts of shit. So anyway, I was trying to figure out my new plan. I'm living at the Cecil Hotel. And somebody had hit me to this place called Los Angeles Athletic Club, which was right down the street, which was like a high-end sort of social club and upscale gym. Like Charlie Chaplin was a founding member of this joint. It seemed a no-brainer that I wanted to join there.
Of course.
Now, I have no idea how they let me in there. I had my credit was beyond bad, and you have to like do a whole credit checks because they give you like credit to drink on and eat on and do whatever, and then you have to pay it at the end of each month. So I just happened to know this guy who was the GM of another social club in Chicago that we had played at a few times, a joint called the Union League Club of Chicago, and I sent him a message and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking of joining this athletic club. Can you put in a word for me?" And he goes, "Oh, I happen to be good friends with the GM over there." So he says, "Don't worry about a thing. I'll write you a letter of recommendation." So I don't know what he said in the letter, but I had this like fat credit over there. Like I had better credit at the club than I did it in my real life, So I would literally, shower and get dressed at the Cecil after waking up, and then I get in the elevator, and the elevator's filled with like just the despots and degenerates of society. People have just had like tracheotomies and stuff like that, and they're breathing through like a hole in their throat. And there's me, like in this suit and like wearing cologne and getting ready to go down to the club for breakfast. And I would literally spend all day there. Like, I'd go there and have breakfast, and I'd read the paper in, like, the smoking room and, do the whole bit. And then I'd work out for, maybe a half hour, and then spend the rest of the day drinking there until it was time to crawl back to the Cecil Hotel. But it was, I loved it there, man. I absolutely loved the club. So you did get to come and check it out then?
We did it once. I think by the time I went with you, your credit was a little iffy there. I think the damage has been done.
Yeah.
We had a few drinks, but there were a few sideways glances. And we didn't stay too long, but I think that at that point, were you parking the van in the parking lot of the athletic club and trying to sleep in the van too? Had you already left the Cecil?
Yeah. Well, I think if we're at that stage, then I'd run out of money, so I couldn't live at the Cecil anymore. And I mean, if I wasn't spending the night at some friend's house, I know I stayed with you guys a fair bit here and there, and with some other folks. If I really had no place else to go, I would take the van and go park it in the parking garage of the athletic club, and then just crash in there, and then wake up and just carry on. So the van became the Cecil Hotel, and yeah.
I have to point out that you're not the only person that I know that stayed at the Cecil. So just
is that right?
That's where, yeah.
Makes me feel better.
Don't feel alone. I don't know if that's just something about you or about me,
but don't drink the water.
Yeah. But yes, that's that place is beautiful. Just old school.
Yeah.
Old school LA. Just classic, and what a neat place to hang out. Most definitely.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad you got to see it, and I'm sorry it wasn't. Earlier in my my residency there.
Right.
When the chips were high.
Right. When the credit account was still fat.
That's right.
I think we paid our own tab that day and moved on.
Oh, yeah. You can't have it all, Blake, I guess.
No, not forever anyway.
And then, I want to talk to you about when I finally made the split from Pete and Little Dog and moved to Nashville and tried to, you and me and our buddy Mark, who was the bass player at the time, we were all sort of talking about, the possibility of just moving the whole operation to Nashville. And I had lived there before, and I think, had you been through there before, but never really had a chance to visit it?
Correct. I've been through there, played a show there with someone else, and then played a show there with you. So I've only been there, a couple of times.
Right.
Just real quick in and out.
Yeah. So, when I left California and started driving to Nashville, that was still an option. That we were still actively talking about that, and I remember you and your wife going out there to check it out, and you being like, I don't know if I could do this.
What would they need a country drummer in Nashville for?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, and I remember we at that time you would fly out, and maybe Cheese would even fly out too, and we'd do some rehearsing and stuff like that. We had a guitar player out there who we were rehearsing up, and I remember it was at that point that I started to get weirder than I was, with stuff, and I just wanted to talk about your recollections of that time and what you what you were thinking.
Right, sure. No, we had definitely all talked about the sort of, when you left Little Dog, that maybe it was best to just get out of the Los Angeles area and, sort of move back to Nashville where you had started, and that Mark and I might go along and see if we could make a run of things based out of there. We had gone back and forth a few times. Like you said, Mark and I both flew into Nashville. We rehearsed some and played a few shows. I think we did that a couple of different times, and then started talking more about the idea, well, should we make this move and make it happen and try to be based out of here?
Right.
And so I did visit, like you mentioned, my wife and I had gone out, and it just didn't seem like the place for me to be just at the moment, but I was good for flying back and forth and seeing what we could make happen, before I made a move. And while you were there, you'd rented a room at a great house from a friend, and you were set up really well. But it just seemed like you were, having had so much music stuff going on and having it rammed down your throat 24/7 nonstop, with someone else sort of maybe guiding the ship, for lack of a better term, meaning the business end of it, scheduling things and stuff for you. And now you were just sort of on your own and free, and it seemed like you just sort of take a detour from music, if you will. I don't mean that in a bad way, but just sort of letting it go behind you for a moment or two, and take a breath of the rest of the world. And as you did, you kind of became a shut-in a little bit.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
There were a lot of dark internet programs you watched, and with the blinds drawn.
Yeah. I haven't talked about this really, too much, and certainly not on the podcast. But I got to Nashville, and again, really